Do you mind just explaining what the trolley problem is?
Well, that itself is a problem, but yes. So some people think the trolley problem is just like a thought experiment of a case. Perhaps the first instance of it is a driver who's on a train heading towards 5 people on a track, and the train can't be stopped, and then they have one option only, which is to switch to another track where there's another person, and the consequences are specified, stipulated. Either 5 people will die or 1 person will die. So sometimes colloquially people think that that's the trolley problem, but that's not the trolley problem. Most people who are asked about this, and there's quite a lot of evidence that this is quite almost universal, will think that perhaps it's okay to switch in that case. The problem arises because there are other cases that are structurally identical in terms of their consequences, where people come to the opposite conclusion. So initially, the example that was used, for example, by Philip Foot, who was the first person to introduce this example, was that of a judge who was in a position whereby punishing an innocent person could save a number of lives. And why was that different from what the driver did in the trolley case? And then, little less than a decade later, Judith Jarvis Thomson introduced the case of a doctor who could kill 1 patient and distribute their organs to 5 people. And then a decade later after that, she came up with another example of the same structural problem, and the narrowest definition of the trolley problem that can be thought of as defining the problem is to have these 2 cases where the consequences are the same. You either have 5 people die or 1 person dies. But in some cases, people think it's okay to do so, say the driver case, but in the case of the doctor or the judge, it's not okay. And I think that's as nice a definition of the trolley problem, narrowly understood as you can have. But again, that's not the only way people think of the trolley problem. Some people go even more abstract. So one of the main contributors to this literature in recent decades, Frances Cam, she defines it much more generically as a question that arises for people who think that you should not always produce the best outcome. And then you have to try to find a way to explain why sometimes it's okay and sometimes it's not okay to cause harm for the greater good. And that, in some sense, is what the trolley problem is really about. And then finally, there are those who label the trolley problem almost any kind of use of an abstract thought experiment that abstracts away from reality, is very schematic, normally includes a fixed set of what the consequences are, and then uses that to theorize in some way. So there's a very narrow way of thinking about it, there's a very general way of thinking about it. But I think being true to history, it's about these 2 cases. One case at least involves a trolley. These days they both involve a trolley, the variations on trolleys, and that I think is the best way to understand what the trolley problem is.